a sense of here. Um, so we're going to start with a welcome. That's where we're at right now. Then the meat of the session is really just going to be hearing perspectives from the members of our leadership team. I have some drafted questions that we can do, but this is really your time for our students who are here. So I want to make sure that any questions that you have for our leaders or for our program staff, that's going to be first priority. And then we'll have some closing and wrap up, but we can keep it pretty chill, pretty loose. So feel free to interrupt at any time, throw questions in the chat at any time. Do what you need to do. I want everybody to walk away with more clarity and better questions answered. My name is Juliana. I have been with Matriculate since 2019. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as manager of leadership recruitment and / development. And so I work a lot with our college student leaders, our advising fellows, and getting to know our students is legitimately my favorite part of working here. Always has been, always will be, no shade to my colleagues. But yeah, I'm excited. And that's my email. You can email me with any questions that you have. Emily?
Yeah, hi. Before I start, Juliana, I don't think Manny and I have access to the attendance link. So could you drop that in the chat as I introduce myself with my llama and sheep picture?
Yes.
Awesome. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm Emily. I currently serve as the manager of revenue at Matriculate, but before that, I served as an advising fellow and then head advising fellow at UC Berkeley, where I graduated in 2020. So it's been a really long journey with the organization, but I've had a total blast going from the program implementation side to working really closely with our full-time team, especially as it relates to development and getting the word out about Matriculate to external networks. So super happy to answer any of your questions and really excited to see the group today.
Tony?
Hi, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. My name's Sunny. I'm currently a junior at the University of Pennsylvania. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm studying business economics and public policy and business analytics here, and doing a minor in urban studies as well. I've been involved with Matriculate since my freshman year. I was an advising fellow, and then the next year I joined the AFLT, and this year I'm on the NAFLT. And it's just like one of my favorite organizations to be a part of. And it makes me feel really good to be making an impact. Some things that I like to do, I love dancing, I love Taylor Swift, I love thrifting and just hanging out with my friends and family, and also the color purple. And if you like ever want to reach out to me about anything, there's my phone number and my email address.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I am the current HAF, well, co-HAF at Emory. Here's my contact info. Same thing as Honey, like reach out to me if you want to. I kind of go back with Matriculate as I was a former HSF, and then I turned into an AF, and now I'm an HAF. So feel free to ask me questions about that experience. I'm a psychology and environmental science major, and the rest are kind of irrelevant fun facts.
I love your cat. It's a fabulous cat.
Thank you.
And then Cole.
Oh yeah, I'm also here. So I am also on the National Advising Fellow Leadership team for class of 24, and I served 2 terms on the AFLT for the 23 and 22 cohorts. I'm currently a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Madison studying conservation biology and getting minors in computer sciences and fashion and textile design.
And I forgot Cole's slide, so that's my fault. So that is on me. Okay. Yes, and these 3 students are all amazing. They've all been involved with Matriculate. I think between the all of you and Emily, it's literally every single role, right? High school fellow, advising fellow, AFLT, HAF, and AFLT, and then staff. I don't know if anyone was ever a summer intern, but it's That may be the only thing that we're missing. So I have some questions to ask these students, but really for our participants, like this is your time, so we can we'll start off with these questions, but throughout, just throw questions in the chat, unmute. We wanna know what you want to hear from these students. And then for Rebecca, Cole, Tani, and Emily, like we can just kind of popcorn around. Not everybody has to answer every question. So yeah. Oh my gosh, Risha, no worries. That's totally fine. Um, so yeah, I'd love to just start and hear what people's experience has been as a matriculate leader so far, and if you have like a main thing that you have learned through being a part of our program.
I think I've had a pretty positive experience with Matriculate, but I feel like I was talking about this with AF today, actually. I feel like the biggest thing I've learned is like in terms of recruitment, is just like learning to be okay with rejection and just like being like, yeah, you're not interested, that's fine, I'll move on. But I feel like being a Matriculate leader has definitely been something that's like developed me. What pre-professionally, is that the correct term? Where I feel like my social skills have gotten a lot better, and it's interesting being like recruiting the own people that I'm going to be managing. And I think that's been like a really nice like full circle moment where I really get to know all the people I'm recruiting and all the students that are going to be asking me questions.
I would say something that has been the most, like, simultaneously the most difficult part, and also like the space that I've learned the most, is just working with so many different people, because like majority of the work that I mean we do on NFLT, and obviously even like the AF, like HSF relationships, all that is virtual, which is really difficult to build those relationships virtually. But so that's been really difficult, but I've also been able to learn how to do that more, because I think like going forward, especially like post COVID, it's going to be really important to know how to do that no matter like what kind of workplace you're in. So I think that's definitely a place that I've learned a lot of skills.
Awesome. Before we move to the second question, does anybody have a top of mind question for any of the students here? Don't be shy. But it's okay if you're being shy. I celebrate that. And I can move on and then, use the chat, or maybe they're just already going to cover all the bases and I wrote these questions perfectly, which is also very possible. So I'd love to hear maybe from Cole, if you want to talk about like balancing matriculate leadership with the other stuff you do on campus, and anything that has helped you manage your time. I think that's one of the most common concerns we get from students, and developers concerns. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so having done a couple different positions, it's definitely changed over time. I can say it is, I think, definitely manageable, and part of it is because Matriculate is so flexible. So I do work another job, tour guide. I have the coat right here for proof. I do research and then also, regular like school stuff. So you can definitely fit it in. I would say that in terms of managing time, I feel like it's something I've actually picked up from staff. And I don't, does anyone on the call remember Lakeisha? I think Juliana, you do. Oh, okay, Emily. Well, she was the campus lead for Madison, and she always talked about like respecting time and setting boundaries with time. And I've definitely picked up on that over the years. So when I was a sophomore and scheduling interviews, ACEs, whatever it was, I would have myself open from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And learning when it's like acceptable to kind of keep those times open has been really helpful for me, especially being on national leadership team. There's a lot of things you kind of have to schedule, meetings, stuff like that. So making sure that you can set aside time that's like, this time is appropriate to schedule matriculate things, this is available, and having time when you're like, I know I need this to do work, I know I need this to do research, I know I need this to do homework, whatever it is, really having a Google Calendar or some way to organize that and respecting your boundaries is really, really important. And that's how I've made it work, especially this past year.
That's awesome, cool. I'll be sure to tell Lakeisha now. She is a queen of boundaries, and I think she helped a lot of people work on that. So I'm like just so happy to hear that that was a positive impact for you. Awesome. I'd love to hear from anybody about what have been some of your favorite parts. You can also, I feel like sometimes it's the flip side of the same coin, or what have been some of the most challenging parts of being a leader with Matriculate.
I'll jump in here, and my answer is kind of also going to incorporate elements of the second question too. But I think a lot of folks, including myself, step into the leadership application feeling this pressure like, oh no, am I going to need to be an expert on everything Matriculate and everything college access in order to provide AFs with support? And in a lot of situations, I think there's so much room to leverage like the expertise and the motivation of your cohort as a whole. So one thing that I did back when I was a head advising fellow is set office hours, as many head advising fellows do, but rather than positioning myself as like the one person who's providing guidance to any AFs who showed up, I would try to coordinate them such that they were group sessions so that advising fellows could come and we could all discuss the issues and challenges they were facing kind of as a group and hear from other folks in the room rather than having it be like a one-way directional street from HAF to AF. So I feel like that was one of the most rewarding parts of the role, is just seeing that like you are leading the fellowship, but in many ways the fellowship is also helping you lead how Matriculate looks like on your campus. And that element of community building was really nice to see, especially at Berkeley, where I had a really challenging first semester, and seeing how folks are here to support their peers was really encouraging to me. So I really loved it.
Yeah, I just saw one of my AFs in the hallway just now. I feel like I kind of agree with Juliana's sentiment, where it's like my favorite thing is also the most challenging thing, and my favorite and most challenging thing is definitely all the one-on-one connections I'm making with a lot of these people when they come to me about questions, about like concerns about the application and like stuff like that. And it's just like sometimes it's a lot because I'm like, who's this face? Who's this name? Like, I know your name, I know your face, and sometimes I can't put it together and I feel really bad. And I'm like, I feel like that's just like a face thing that's really challenging for me. But I feel like it really is so rewarding to just like really see your AFs like progress and like become more confident in their advising skills and being able to like support each other and like really starting to like see the friendships and the community that's starting to blossom. So like I feel like it's the best thing and the worst thing, but yeah, I love all my AFs.
Thank you both. Any other thoughts on things that were rewarding or things that have been less rewarding?
One other thing that I would add, not to take up too much time, but that I really loved, was getting to know the high school fellows who then matriculated to Berkeley every year. Because I feel like as an HAF or an AF leader, a lot of your world is occupied in like not only advising your own students, but also working with other AFs. But there comes that time at the end of the year where you see all of the work come to fruition, and you get to like be that person that you needed back when you were a starting freshman at like your college. So seeing that whole full circle moment was always really cool for me.
Awesome.
I like going off of that, I kind of had the same experience. My like last year, one of my HSFs, she ended up coming to Penn as well, and actually like also like the business school, which is where I am as well. And it was like her number one, and but it wasn't her number one until like I like talked to her about it, and like she was like, oh, like what's like a good school for business? And I was like, oh, well, like this is a good school, like blah blah blah. And we kind of like did all that research together, and then she was like, oh my gosh, like I love it, like I'd love to apply. And then she applied, and like we worked through it together, and she got in, and it's just like such a full circle experience. And I see her on campus all the time and like wave to her. I'm like, damn, like I kind of played a part in that. So definitely rewarding.
That's amazing. Cool. So I would imagine the actual application process itself may be something that's on people's minds, given that it is due this Sunday, but due dates are nothing if not flexible. So if anyone needs an extension, you just let me know and I will give you one. But I have some questions here, but I'd love to hear if anybody has any specific questions or concerns about the application or interview process. Okay, so I see a couple of questions in the chat. So this first question, how do you recommend tackling the email prompt question? I'm just gonna pull up our application so I have it here to reference. Rachel, are you referring to the performance task aspect part? Yeah, okay. So my advice for the performance task is really just to be as specific as you can. We're not looking for one right answer. And I'm not just saying that to say that, I really mean that. It's really just a chance to see, like, if you were working with a team and managing a diverse group of people, how would you approach like connecting with your team? And what is kind of your vision as a leader. So when we say to spend no more than 90 minutes, we really do mean that. So I would say just to show your perspective, be specific in like how you're addressing your team, what tasks you're actually asking each of them to do. But also not to worry about, we know that like this isn't a real team, that this is a artificial situation that we've created. So you're not going to be judged on like the recruitment plan that you make. It's really more those leadership skills. And if that did not address your question, you have something really specific about like any of the documents that are linked in the performance task. If you want to stay on at the end, I'm happy to like walk it through in more detail. But I hope that was helpful. And then we had another question about what the timeline is, and I'm just gonna hold on that because we will walk through that in one of the next slides. But I would love to hear from the panelists about your application process, your training process. I don't know if you were nervous through the application, what training was like for you, really anything to put yourself back in those early days, any advice that you can share.
I guess I can go. I just had a coffee chat with someone who was interested in leadership, and they asked like a lot of the kind of same questions, especially about the performance task. And looking back at like all my applications for leadership, I think something really important is just showing skills and like thinking about the skills that you think are relevant and necessary to the leadership roles is really important. And whether or not, like, I didn't come into advising fellow leadership having worked in like a nonprofit before, not saying you need those like super, super specific level skills, but your ability to communicate, to manage things like that, anything that you think would be relevant are so important to show. And also just kind of seconding everything that's been said, being specific is also very important. You want to say exactly what you mean, just be very upfront with it. And that's kind of how I felt looking back over my applications.
That's awesome. Thank you, Cole. And I want to just re-emphasize one of the points that Cole made, that like we do not look for any specific experience going into the roles. And skills like communication, persistence, prioritization, like I guarantee you everybody on this call has a good example. I've seen people give an example from everything from like their job working at a restaurant to like helping their younger siblings, to a group project that they had, to like a conflict in their group of friends. Like it can be literally anything, as long as you can just be specific about like what happened and what you learned from it. That self-awareness is really what we're looking for. I'd love to hear one other person about application process, and or you can talk about training, just application and training overall.
I can talk. I guess I feel like my application process is a little different because I initially applied as AFLT, and then Juliana emailed me being like, "Oh, you want to apply to be HAF?" And I was like, sure." And then I was like, and now here I am. So I honestly don't remember writing the application or doing it, so I can't really speak on that, like to be fully honest. But I feel like training was a really good experience. I feel like it like centered in on all like the core values of matriculate and like why exactly we do this, and like our models of like coordination, is that no, like cooperation, and like trying to create like this community like across colleges, and like really focusing in on how can we prepare our AFs to be the best that they can be to serve these students. I guess the only thing I would consider before applying to leadership is like how I would think about how afraid you are of like doing new things and like trying things that could be potentially embarrassing, because I feel like tabling can be a little embarrassing when you get like rejected like 5 times in a row, and like you kind of feel sad and like, damn, no one wants to talk to me. So I feel like that's something you have to keep in mind, that like rejection is like a very real part of being a leader, I guess. But I would just say like I wouldn't be afraid to try new things. Yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot and I've grown a lot from doing things I normally wouldn't have.
That's awesome. And to Rebecca's point about initially applying to one role and then getting another role, like that is something that happens. And I wanted to highlight that this year we have one application for all leadership roles. So if you are interested in getting more involved, but you're not sure what's the best fit, you can click multiple roles on your application. And also, if you're going through the process and you realize, oh, I thought I wanted to do one thing, but now I realize this other one's more interesting, or just speaks to me more, or maybe I have more time than I thought, or less time. Like, it's very normal for students to start in one pool and move to another one. And also, it may be something like Rebecca, where we have a lot of students that maybe are hesitant to apply to one, and then in your interview we may encourage you to apply to another one if that is a good fit for everybody. So I would just say don't worry too much. It's okay to go in open to the process, and I think naturally as you move through your application interview, things may fall into place. But really, like, we don't want to trick people in the application. We want to be as transparent as possible. So if you have any questions about it, or you're not sure about an answer, or like, I always get so sad when I come in on Monday morning and I get these emails of people like, I submitted my application at 12:01. Are you still gonna like read it? Like, just don't worry about it. Yes, of course. And if you need an extension, we'll give it to you. I don't want anybody staying up till 2 a.m. to their application. Though I remember college too. It's not like I didn't stay up till 2 a.m. doing things all the time. Any other questions, concerns about application or training? And I know I will get to that timeline question, so don't worry about that. Okay. So now, community and professional development. I honestly think that Matriculate's leadership roles, like, you come out of these positions, obviously I'm biased, I'm deeply biased, but I really think that our students come out of these positions with like a skill set that I certainly did not have when I graduated college. Like the level of just leadership, communication, challenging situations, like self-management, collaboration that they do is amazing. I learned so much from our students. And also Rebecca talked a little bit about training for our head advising fellows and NAFLT. Every summer we do an in-person leadership training in New York City. You get to meet Matriculate leaders from all across the country. It's so much fun. It's all paid for by Matriculate. So I just want to give that little spiel that I think that like this can really help people learn a lot of really valuable skills that will translate to like whatever you want to do in the future. But I would love to hear from our panelists. Maybe we can start with Emily or Tanny about what skills you feel like you've learned through your leadership roles, and also maybe if like that is applying to things outside of Matriculate, if you're already seeing that show up.
I have like so much I want to say here, so I'm going to try to keep it really specific. But in short, I think my head advising fellow experience, hands down, was the number one thing that I mentioned on resumes and interviews. Not only for like ultimately, obviously, like I ended up working at Matriculate full time, but I recently applied to grad school and it was like the hugest thing that shaped my applications. And when I applied to research on campus back when I was an undergrad, like any interview question I was asked, whether it was like, what's a challenge that you faced or overcome, or describe your experience working with different groups of people, like I could draw upon literally all that I did as a head advising fellow. One thing I would say I loved about head advising fellow training in particular, I ended up going to the in-person New York training back in like whatever it was, 2019. I think as an advising fellow, sometimes it can be difficult to reach out to like the nationwide network of Matriculate folks. But at training, you get to become like really good friends with people from all over the country. And two head advising fellows who I never would have met otherwise, one at Notre Dame and one at Princeton, are like two of my very best friends to this day. We'll do like pizza crawls and walk around New York together, and it's great. And I think what's really special about training is I think everyone is coming in with a lot of the same like worries and excitements about being a head advising fellow. Like that's the moment where you're shaping your vision of what Matriculate will look like at your campus. And people have really great ideas for community building and engaging advising fellows in the tough moments too. So honestly, like training alone is like a huge reason to apply for this role and consider it. So happy to share also later on if anyone's interested in applying to grad school and is wondering about how to figure Matriculate into their applications. I would love to talk with you. So yeah, I will pause there, but so much to say on this question.
Yeah, so I would definitely second everything that Emily said. I actually can't speak to the in-person training, unfortunately, because I had COVID. So I had to join virtually, and it was really sad. But I do agree that I think like all of the skills that I've been able to gain through Matriculate, all the ones that like Emily mentioned, I like talk about it a lot in interviews and things like that. But also just like more of a soft skill, I guess, is just being able to like communicate with so many different people that are different than you, which is just like a life skill to have, to be able to like like understand like different people's perspectives. And I think sometimes in our own like campuses we can be trapped in a bubble of people very similar to us because that's who we like really are drawn to and become friends with, and it's important that we like interact with people that are different from us in every single kind of way. So I think that's something that has been one of the best parts about Matriculate, because I've become friends with people that I never ever would have met otherwise. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tani. Thank you, Emily. So we have about 15 minutes left. I'd love to hear if people have any other questions, or if our student leaders want to say anything that we didn't really capture so far. And you can DM me if you want. And then I have just a couple slides about the application process itself to go over upcoming deadlines and also what it looks like after you submit your application. But any questions? Other questions? Thoughts? Feedback for our panelists? Or for me? Yeah, so what are things you learned working with others on the leadership team at your school? That's a great question. Thanks, Rachel.
I definitely feel like I met people I didn't think I would meet. Like I met like a couple seniors, couple juniors, and like from different majors. So like that was very interesting to just get to know like people that wouldn't be in my normal social circle of my classes. And I feel like I don't think this doesn't really answer the question, but I feel like I've learned a lot more about Emory now that like I have to like book rooms and like figure out where things go and like what rules are for flyers are. So I feel like I learned like a lot of logistical stuff for like how to like be on campus, but I feel like teamwork isn't that bad. I feel like it's just really interesting to like set your team's like vibe, as cringe as that is, and like see what like the environment is gonna be and like how all of you guys work together cohesively and how your personalities kind of like bounce off each other.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I would say, and this is still kind of like a first draft thought, so I wonder if any of the other panelists have experienced the same thing. I feel like I got a lot better at acknowledging when things don't go correctly and still manage to like motivate your fellow leaders, because recruitment is always, I feel like, super challenging in a number of ways. Like, to speak to Rebecca's point earlier, sometimes you'll flyer and people won't want to talk to you. Or maybe they might say something like, no, I'm not interested. And that doesn't feel good all the time. And maybe at the end of recruitment season, you might realize like, oh man, I wish I had more advising fellow candidates to come into our fellowship. And I think one really special thing about the way Matriculate is set up is that like, even in those moments, you're not made to feel like you were a failure as a leader. And I think there's plenty of moments to step back and strategize about what folks could do next time and how to like motivate the cohort that is entering like Matriculate at your fellowship for that year. So I feel like that was a very cool interpersonal skill that I learned, because it can be really hard, I think, to like acknowledge disappointment in your fellow leaders and still manage to have a good time coming out of the end of it. And I think going off of Rebecca's point too about just like personality wise, I had a co-head advising fellow named Elaine Wynn, and she was so awesome. And I think I had this vision going into head advising fellowship where I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to be like really polished. And when we do like all fellowship meetings, I'm gonna have to stick to the script and like be really professional. And there are still moments when you can do that. But Elaine just brought so much of her authentic personality and connected so easily with folks that it was a really cool moment where I could see like, even as a leader, I can bring a lot of my own personality and my own values into this role. And it doesn't have to literally be like the Matriculate curriculum A to Z. So that was kind of a cool moment for me too, as a leader beyond Matriculate as well.
Cool. Thank you both so much. So just reviewing, the application is due this Sunday, and I can put a link to that if anybody needs that. But the first step is just a short eligibility form to make sure you're eligible for leadership, so you don't waste your time on an application for positions that you're not eligible for. Then we have our application. The performance task is the last part of that. And again, there's really are no right or wrong answers. We're just looking to get to know you more. So just feel free to be your unique self. I know that sounds like cheesy, but it really is true. And then after that, we'll review your application and you'll have an interview that will be either held with a student leader or a member of the Matriculate staff. I really encourage students to use that time to ask their questions as well. You'll have somebody that has a lot of experience with Matriculate, either as a student or staff or both. So really, don't hesitate. Like, you're interviewing us too. You're interviewing this program to see if it works for you and what you want to do. And then I already put this in there, but these are the leadership skills that we use to review applications and in the interview process. It's also skills that we want to make sure all of our students get in their time with Matriculate. So if these are things that speak to you, that resonate with you, that you want to spend your time continuing to develop, then it may be a great fit. So here's a little QR code to the application. We're also having some Zoom office hours tomorrow. We'll send the link out for that too. So if you have any last minute questions, you can feel free to stop by those. But otherwise, thank you so much, and I really hope that people apply.